You followed the rules. Go to college. Work hard. Be patient. Stay loyal. Buy a house. That was the formula. So why at 32, 35, 38? Does it feel like the finish line keeps moving? What if the problem isn't you? What if you were trained for a world that no longer exists? If you're a millennial in your 30s in America right now, this is going to feel personal. You were raised in the 1990s, a decade of optimism. The economy expanded. Technology felt hopeful. Home ownership felt attainable. You were handed a blueprint. Work hard, gain security, build wealth, relax. That blueprint worked for the generation before you. But adulthood didn't begin with expansion. It began with collapse. The 2008 financial crisis hit just as many millennials were entering the workforce. Jobs disappeared. Companies froze hiring. Families lost homes. That wasn't just economic instability. It was psychological conditioning. And the age you experience instability matters. Because early adulthood is when your brain calibrates what normal feels like. When long-term uncertainty appears during identity formation, the brain adapts. Cortisol increases. Risk tolerance narrows. Security becomes a priority. You didn't consciously decide to become cautious. Your nervous system did. Then, just as recovery felt possible, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted everything again. Another reset. Another reminder that stability is fragile. So now, even during calm periods, you don't fully exhale. You brace. That bracing feels like anxiety, but it's actually learned vigilance. But economic stress alone doesn't explain the heaviness. Comparison does. Psychologist Leon Festinger proposed that humans determine self-worth through comparison. In previous decades, comparison was local. Now it's infinite. You don't compare to your neighbor. You compare to venture-backed founders, crypto millionaires, influencers buying homes at 28. Your brain doesn't process this as content. It processes it as status evaluation, and status threat activates survival circuits. That subtle tension when scrolling, that's your nervous system asking, are we losing ground? There's a sentence many millennials repeat privately, I should be further by now. That sentence didn't come from nowhere. It came from inherited milestones. By 30, stable job, own property, clear direction. But the economic ladder shifted upward. Housing inflation outpaced wage growth. The entry point moved, but your internal clock didn't update. So when your reality doesn't match the inherited timeline, your brain interprets it as personal failure, even if it's structural delay. And then something even deeper happens in your 30s. Your identity starts recalibrating. Developmental psychologist Erik Erikson described this stage as a shift toward stability and contribution. But what happens when stability feels uncertain? You question your path. You revisit old dreams. You calculate risk differently. Neurologically, dopamine reward sensitivity subtly shifts in your mid-30s. Novelty feels less euphoric. Time feels more finite. Decisions feel heavier. This isn't weakness. It's maturation colliding with instability. You want security. The system rewards volatility. That conflict creates quiet internal friction. But the heaviest emotion isn't fear. It's grief. Not grief for a person. Grief for expectation. You grieve the adulthood you imagined at 18. You grieve the promise that effort guarantees outcome. You grieve the simplicity of believing that stability was linear. Millennials were raised on meritocracy. Adulthood revealed complexity. That mismatch creates cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is exhausting. So you compensate. You work harder. You compare more. You push further. But the pressure remains. Because the pressure isn't just financial. It's existential recalibration. The rules changed. Economic structures evolved. Technology amplified competition. Security became conditional. But the messaging didn't evolve with it. You were still told, if it's not working, try harder. So when stability didn't arrive, you blamed yourself. And self-blame is heavier than debt. Maybe the hardest part isn't the debt, or the housing market, or the competition. Maybe the hardest part is realizing you kept blaming yourself for a game that changed while you were still playing by the old rules. You wake up some mornings and feel behind your friends, behind your expectations, behind the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. And you don't say it out loud, Because at this age, you're supposed to have it together. But here's the truth no one told you. You were a child when the world felt stable. You became an adult when stability disappeared. You didn't fail adulthood. Adulthood changed. And somewhere along the way, you started carrying shame that was never yours to hold. You scroll. You compare. You overwork. You stay quiet because you think if you just try harder, you'll finally feel caught up. But what if there's no catching up? What if this feeling is grief? Grief for the future you were promised. Grief for the simplicity you grew up believing in. Grief for the idea that effort guarantees safety. And maybe that's why you're so tired. Not physically, existentially. But here's the part that matters. You are not weak for feeling this. You are not lazy. You are not behind. You are a generation that learned how to survive instability without ever being taught how to process it. And surviving quietly is still surviving. So if you're in your 30s right now and you feel lost or pressured or slightly disappointed in yourself, maybe don't ask, why am I not further? Maybe ask, how much have I already endured? Because the truth is, you're not broken. You're adapting to a world that shifted beneath your feet. And adaptation, even when it feels slow, is still movement.